Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Missing Link in Your Healing, the podcast where we bring you a holistic take on health so that you can actually heal yourself. And hopefully, we reveal some of those missing links that you might not have been aware of. So, have you ever experienced a feeling of being stuck in your life, frustrated, emotionally congested, tense, irritable, hypersensitive, without really knowing what was going on? So, what if I told you that that wasn't necessarily only psychological, those symptoms were not only psychological, and that they might actually be energetic, energetic signals coming directly from your body? Today, we're diving into the liver gallbladder axis, the physical as well as the energetic, the emotional, the mental, and even the spiritual aspect of this beautiful organ combination. And you are going to learn that this partnership governs your vision, it governs flow, it governs emotional movement, it governs courage and the courage to make clear decisions. I'll show you how this organ system influences far more than just your physical health in this episode, and how imbalance can show up as things like irritability, as burnout, as suppressed emotions, as physical symptoms such as PMS and headaches, and feeling disconnected from your life purpose. If you've ever felt like your life has lost its momentum, then this conversation is for you. So the liver and gallbladder are coupled organs. And so please just note that when I'm talking about liver and gallbladder, I'm mostly talking about the energetic function, right? I'll tell you when I'm speaking about the physical, but mostly I'm talking about what we call the organ energy function. It's just that saying liver organ function energy or gallbladder organ function energy. That's a mouthful. So I'm just going to be saying liver and gallbladder. Please just know that I'm speaking about the entire organ energetically, organs energetically, and not just physically. So the liver and gallbladder are connected organs, and they are associated with what we call in Jinshin the third depth. And this is associated with the wood element. So they're associated with growth, they're associated with expansion, they're associated with creativity. And they are also connected to the season of spring, new growth, flourishing, as well as the planet of Jupiter. And Jupiter governs expansion as well. And the liver and gallbladder, the tissue that is regulated by the liver and gallbladder organ function energy is the blood. And in Jinshin Jitsu, they say that the blood transports the life essence, the key to every single cell of the body. So when we're thinking about the liver in particular, I want you just to imagine if all the organs were members of an orchestra, the liver is the conductor. And in order for you to appreciate just how many things your liver does, I am going to just run through some of the most important physiological functions. So your liver metabolizes carbohydrates so that it can stabilize your blood sugar. It metabolizes fats so that it can provide energy and hormone building blocks, and proteins to support the safe repair of the body, as well as the removing of nitrogenous waste. Now, functions that we tend to be more familiar with is that the liver does detoxification and biotransformation. It neutralizes and processes drugs, medication, recreational drugs, alcohol, hormones, especially estrogen. The liver is responsible for removing hormones once they've done what they needed to do out of the bloodstream, as well as, very importantly, environmental toxins. And it converts fat-soluble toxins into water-soluble so that they can actually be eliminated. So it's either, those toxins are either bound to a bile salt and then excreted through the large intestine, or they are turned into water-soluble toxins, sent off to the kidney, and then we excrete them through our urine. The liver is also really important for protein synthesis. It makes albumin, which helps us to maintain our fluid balance. It makes clotting factors, vital for us to survive. And it also makes transport proteins so that hormones, minerals, and drugs can be transported in and out of cells. It is a blood regulator and storage facility. It acts as a blood reservoir. It breaks down old red blood cells. It also recycles iron, and it serves as a store for iron, for the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, D, E, and K, as well as vitamin B12 and copper. The liver is responsible for bile production and for fat digestion. So bile allows fats to be emulsified so that they can actually be digested and absorbed. The bile is responsible for us absorbing vitamins A, D, E, and K. And bile, and this is something that a lot of people don't know, bile is responsible for healthy bowel movements. And so very often when we have constipation, we are doing more fiber and we're focusing on the colon when actually the problem is that there's not sufficient bile. So, if your bowel motions are too loose, it can be that there's excessive bile. And if they are too firm, not too firm, if you're constipated, then it's because there's not enough flow of bile. The liver and the liver particularly also does immune and inflammatory regulation. It helps to filter blood from the gut. It removes bacteria and endotoxins and debris that comes from the gut, and it plays an important part in immune surveillance. So your liver is important in terms of finding out where the bad guys are so that they can be neutralized. Then your liver is also essential in hormone balance. Now, you see, this is another thing that we don't often think about. So your liver makes cholesterol. And cholesterol is used to stabilize cell membranes. It's also used to make steroid hormones, particularly cortisol, estrogen, and progesterone. And the liver is also responsible for removing those hormones out of the bloodstream once they've done their jobs. The liver is important for homeostasis. It maintains overall metabolic equilibrium. It coordinates nutrient availability with bodily demand. I couldn't read my own handwriting. It coordinates nutrient availability with bodily demand. I just want to go back to the cholesterol thing. So the liver makes cholesterol, and cholesterol is used to repair cell membranes. It's an important part of cell membranes. So it's not just to repair, it's to make them and to repair them. And so when we take a cholesterol lowering drug, again, no shame to anyone who's taking a cholesterol lowering drug, but just so that you know what's going on in your body, we're treating the high cholesterol by suppressing the cholesterol production. But there's got to be a reason why the liver is making more cholesterol. So the liver makes more cholesterol in various conditions. So, for example, when you have problems with your thyroid, often it can actually trigger excess cholesterol production. But the liver also makes excess cholesterol in response to inflammation, because inflammation damages cells, and particularly the cells that line your blood vessels. And so cholesterol, we hear about the cholesterol plaques, and the reason why the cholesterol is so bad is because it clogs up our arteries. But the reason why the cholesterol is clogging up our arteries is because the cells that line the arteries, or artery walls, are damaged. And the cholesterol is going in to repair. So it's the chronic inflammation that leads to the damage, which then leads to the liver sorting it out by making cholesterol. And then what we do is we suppress the cholesterol. But the inflammation and the damage is actually still going. So it's an important note. So cholesterol is not a bad thing. We have this sort of perception very often that cholesterol is bad. It's not a bad thing. It's essential. It's essential to our health. It's essential for normal hormone function. It's essential for healthy membranes. It's essential for repair. Anyway, I digress. I'm going to get off my little cholesterol soapbox. So now we're going to talk about the more sort of energetic functions, all right, of the liver and gallbladder. So the liver and gallbladder as a unit are associated either with hypersensitivity or a lack of sensitivity. And in Jinshin-jyutsu, we learn that blocked creativity leads to frustration, and that in turn can lead to depression or excessive control of oneself or situations. Now, I historically do not have great liver and gallbladder function. Genetically, I don't have a fantastic liver function, but I can tell you that my primary limiting belief is I need to control myself, others in the world, which has probably got more to do with my not great liver and gallbladder function than my genetics. So in traditional Chinese medicine, now this part I find fascinating, the liver houses the hun, all right, which is it's called the ethereal soul. So in traditional Chinese medicine, they say that the body's animated by the Shen. So when we spoke about the heart organ function energy, I said to you the heart is the warehouse of the Shen, right? That's where the Shen is housed, and that's the spirit. But the spirit is expressed through 5 soul aspects, which are associated with what they call the Zhang organs. So the Zhang organs in traditional Chinese medicine are the heart, the liver, the spleen, the lungs, and the kidney. And so the hun the one that is housed in the liver, it is the aspect of consciousness that gives us vision. It gives us imagination. It gives us direction and the capacity to move out of the present moment. So the hun, this ethereal soul, helps to animate us and move us forward. It regulates our dreams, our vision, our imagination. These aspects of consciousness that help us to create what we'd love to create in this world. And it's called ethereal because it's light, it's mobile, it's expansive, it's not bound by the physical form, and it bridges the material and higher awareness. So this is energetically what's happening in your liver, guys. I mean, don't you find that amazing? I find that amazing. So the hun connects us to our higher purpose. It's the part of us in the traditional text, they say it's the part of us that remembers heaven. Isn't that beautiful? The hun is the part of us that remembers heaven. And so when our liver physically and energetically is healthy, we're more capable of doing that. It is also the soul aspect that wants to evolve. It's that part of us that is longing for expansion. So it is associated indeed with spiritual longing. It's associated with seeking meaning. It's associated with a desire to contribute above just our own self-interests. It governs our dreams, as I said, our imagination, our life direction, and our spiritual vision. And when the hun is imbalanced, which is when this energy of the liver is disturbed, then we feel a lack of purpose. We have incredibly vivid dreams, and we can experience restlessness. So, how interesting. So that's just one part of it. The liver houses the hun, which is the ethereal soul that governs our vision, our imagination, our expansion, and our longing, our soul's longing for meaning. So, okay, to a bit more prosaic, your liver organ function energy governs, as I said, I'm going to repeat myself, but I think it's worth repeating. It governs, this is now physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, growth and vision. The liver is the organ that governs the health of the eye. Anything to do with the eye, whether it's in the eyelids, whether it's the vision, whether it's any of the parts of the eye, the liver governs the health of the eye. It governs our sight and our vision. It governs our direction and purpose and our capacity, as I said earlier, to move forward in life. It's the visionary and the regulator of flow. It regulates smooth movements of the body, the mind, and the emotion. It's associated with flexibility. It governs and controls the health of the tendons together with the gallbladder. And so it's directly associated with flexibility. So when we keep our physical body flexible, we help with that flexibility of that energy in the liver organ function energy. And by the same token, when our liver organ function energy is healthy, then our body is capable of being more flexible. It also governs the flexibility or the flow of our emotions. When the liver organ function energy is healthy, it enables emotions to move through us rather than to be suppressed and become stuck and cause signs and symptoms in the body. The liver gives energy also to all our emotions. So our liver organ function energy determines our capacity to experience, connect to, and allow our emotions to flow freely. It houses our deep-seated beliefs. In Jinshin they say that the liver is the organ of I believe. I believe. What do I believe? What do I trust? What can I trust is true? And so this is really important because it's our beliefs about ourselves. It houses our beliefs about others. It houses our beliefs about the world. And so those foundational limiting beliefs that we spoke about in one of the very early episodes of this podcast, they are effectively energetically housed in the liver. Important to note, right? It is also, the liver is the organ of hypersensitivity. So when you're hypersensitive to sound, hypersensitive to light, hypersensitive to food, hypersensitive to drugs, anything like that, that is a sign and a symptom of, it can be a sign of dysfunction in the liver organ function. So I just want to go back a bit and say, so I said to you, genetically, I don't have good phase 2 detoxification. I don't methylate well. So genetically, my liver function is not great. And I am extremely sensitive to environmental toxins, to chemicals, cleaning agents, synthetic fragrances. it doesn't make me deathly ill, but I get a headache almost immediately, and I get hungover. Like I get a food hangover if there's too much MSG in the food, or if there's any MSG in the food really, or too many preservatives. And interestingly enough, I was much, much, much more sensitive when I was much younger. And I've done a lot of work. So I've done a lot of work on my physical liver health, and I've done a lot of stuff on uncovering my limiting beliefs and dealing with emotional suppression. And I am an emotional suppressor of note. You know how you need to teach what you most need to learn. Okay, that would be me. So I can tell you that my liver function has improved over years, and I'm 55 now. My liver function is much better now than what it was when I was 30. Can absolutely guarantee that. And that's not because I'm a complete health freak, because I'm not. I've actually become much more tolerant of things. I can take more things that don't make me sick. I can tolerate more chemicals. I have actually become more tolerant. Although I don't know, you'll have to ask my husband on that one. I'm probably still as impatient as I ever was. But I do believe that I'm more tolerant. And that's partly because I've been working on the energetics that directly affect my liver, because I can't change my genetics. So, organ of hypersensitivity. So, when it's balanced, when the organ function energy is balanced, then we are creative. We feel inspired, we're flexible, and we can be decisive. When it's imbalanced, become frustrated, we can become resentful, we have suppressed anger, we can be irritable, and we have this feeling of stuck. So, the emotion of the liver and gallbladder is anger and frustration and irritability and guilt. That's an important one. Guilt is when the anger is directed inward. Anger is when it's directed outward. I'm angry because you did something to me, but I'm so angry with myself. That very often is the guilt, because we feel guilty because we think that we did something to someone that caused them more harm or more pain than good, right? And it may be true. It may have caused them a whole lot of harm, but guilt is an internalized form of anger. So the physical symptoms of stagnation in this liver organ function energy include PMS, headaches, bloating, sighing. I find myself doing that as well. Mood swings, emotional suppression, anger, and disappointment. And whenever we are disappointed, it's because we have an expectation of ourselves or others or the world or God or the universe that hasn't been met. And that is disappointment. So I remember when I was young and I first did traditional Chinese medicine, I was like, well, you know what? I don't understand. I don't have great liver, but I'm not an angry person. Like I'm not volatile. I'm volatile, but I don't scream and shout at it. And then I learned that it was disappointment. I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And when we go on a little bit later, I'll tell you about the control issues as well, and you'll see why it is. So I'll tell you now, one of the things that when people have liver disorders is they can either be emotionally incredibly volatile, so, just lose it whenever they want to, or on the surface, they can be incredibly calm. I'm that person, calm, good in a crisis, right? But that's a strategy to cover the inner chaos. The inner chaos is going on, but outwardly, you actually don't see it. So it can manifest both ways. And it's important to know that, because then you can see where you fall into that spectrum. Okay. Another thing that I want to say is that your liver organ function and your gallbladder, but particular liver, has huge implications into your hormonal health, right? But it's beyond the scope of this podcast. Otherwise, I'll be here forever. And I don't want to bore you. And it also has massive repercussions in terms of your digestion. So, I just mentioned that your bile flow determines whether you get constipated or not. So, your liver gallbladder axis has a huge effect on how well you digest and how well you regulate hormonally. And there's even a kind of burnout that's associated with your liver, particularly burnout's associated with not feeling as if you're living your purpose. And when your liver organ function energy is imbalanced, you feel stuck, as if you're not living your purpose. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to do a masterclass where I'm going to go into the intricacies of the signs, more than what I just have, of the signs and symptoms physically and the diseases that are associated when the liver and gallbladder axis are dysfunctional. So if you keep your ears and eyes peeled, because as soon as that masterclass goes out, you will know. If you want to guarantee that I let you know about that, please will you send me your email address? You can email me directly to me, or you can leave it in the comments. I'll record it, and then I'll obviously send an email out when that masterclass is ready. So, um, now we're going to move on to the gallbladder. So the gallbladder is the decider. It's the courage holder, and the gallbladder says, I know. So the liver is the visionary. It connects us to our vision. But now here's the thing. You can connect to the vision of what you'd love to create in your life. And if you don't have the courage to step out of your comfort zone and make the choices and take the actions that are going to get you there, well, then it's just a beautiful vision. And so the liver allows us to access our creative imagination and connect to our spirit through the hun, remember? And the gallbladder gives us the courage and the decisiveness to actually stand by what we believe is true and take choices. It's the decision maker. So when it's blocked, our creativity turns inwards, and that becomes anger. And the more anger we have, whether it's suppressed or whether it's out there in the open, the more it affects the gallbladder. And so the question we want to ask ourselves, sorry, just about creativity, it's not just art, you know. I used to always think creativity was about like, well, are you artistic? Like, you know, can you draw a beautiful picture, or can you sing, or can you make music? And it is about that. But I'm talking the creativity I'm talking about, the context that I'm speaking about here is, are you consciously creating what your spirit is longing to express in this world? Are you living in alignment with what you love? Is that what your vision is of what you would love for yourself? Most people don't even know what that is, all right? And that is what creates the stuckness. So it's important that we connect to what is our spirit longing to express through us? What is it that we would love to create in this world? And the gallbladder then helps us to take the choices and be decisive about moving forward. So the gallbladder organ function energy, it takes care of the form of the body. It also helps to clear the mind. It takes our indecision and helps us to make clear choices. It governs decision making, as I said. In Jinshin Jitsu, they say it brings light into the darkness. The light brings clarity, and the clarity then allows us to make decisions. One of the biggest energy drains is not being able to decide. Honestly, a very, very wise healer told me this when I was very much younger, like I only just started my practice. I was probably in my mid-20s. And she said, not deciding is actually what's making you sick, because it's draining your energy. And so ironically, when your gallbladder organ function energy is not good, then you can't decide. But the more you don't decide and the less you take action, the more you drain that energy. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So, what else does it do? It governs our decision making, as I said. It also governs judgment and moral courage, standing up for what is true for us. It supports our vision by turning it into action through choice. So when your gallbladder organ function energy is balanced, you have courage, you have clarity, you have confidence, and you feel decisive. When it's imbalanced, you might have timidity, you might second guess yourself, you might have bitterness, you might have indecision, you might fear being judged. You may hesitate chronically. You may find yourself people pleasing overly, right? And you can also find yourself, when the gallbladder organ function energy is imbalanced, feeling as if you can't digest your life. You can't digest the choices you've made. That's where the bitterness comes from. So I'm not going to cover all the disease states that are associated with the liver and gallbladder, but I'm going to just talk about in general. I'm talking about liver disorders in general. What are the unconscious drivers in liver disorders in general? Well, as I mentioned to you earlier, very often someone who has underlying liver issues is very calm and confident on the surface, but it's a strategy to cover the underlying chaos. Remember, that's one of my strategies for sure. But you can also find that you have the opposite side of the spectrum. They can be incredibly emotionally volatile. And so people with liver disorders, now this can be anything from cirrhosis to liver cancer. Okay, it's just a general taster. Often are confused by the mother or whichever their primary female caregiver was as inconsistent behavior. So if you had a mother who was either very affectionate or aloof or incredibly volatile, then this can actually set the stage for a weakness in that an energy imbalance in the liver organ function energy. And it's very common in those of us who are still waiting for that for the childhood love and acceptance that we perceive we didn't get, or when we think it was conditional, like if I was good, then they would love me kind of story. I mean, hello, I think that's just about all of us. And when there's conflict between the mother and the partner, that relationship conflict can very often affect the child and create a weakness and an imbalance because there's no control, there's no safety. So the more conflicted the relationship between the parents are, or the mother and whoever her partner is, the more it creates instability for the child, and the more that instability then translates itself into this indecisiveness. Are they like this today, or are they going to be like that? And very often people with liver conditions have lots of unresolved anger towards their parents, probably both their parents. Now, listen, this is such a generalization. We can actually say this is applicable to just about everybody. When we do the masterclass, we'll go into more finer details on the specifics of what this actually looks like. So the other condition that I wanted to talk about, the most common one with gallbladders, is gallstones, right? Now, I too have had gallstones. And when I tell you, I'll tell you. So let me just tell you what the thing with gallstones is, and then I'll tell you my little story. So gallstones, bitterness and resentment from chronically unmet expectations. So remember, when our expectations are unmet, we are disappointed, and then we have anger, and that suppressed anger can affect our liver and gallbladder. And so the gallstones happen from suppressed pain or trauma where it can't be pushed aside any longer. It wants attention. It's trying to get your attention. And it's associated with the need for like either justice or vengeance or an apology, and it stops us from actually being able to move forward. And so instead of feeling our feelings, those of us who have gallbladder problems, we analyze our feelings rather than feeling them. So I had gallstones, and my child must have been about, she must have been about 10 months old. My husband and I decided we were going to go to England because, it's a long story, he needed to pay off a bursary and he could get work there easily, blah, 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 blah. And so, but we weren't really planning to be pregnant when we went. And so, I mean, you'd think that between a vet and a homeopath, we would know that sex without contraception could equal pregnancy, but I'd come off my contraceptive. But, we were being careful. Anyway, I felt pregnant and we decided to go anyway. And I thought, like, how hard can this be? I mean, honestly, having a baby in South Africa, having a baby in the UK, how hard can it be? So off we tootled when I was about 4 months pregnant. And I always had this idea that I was going to have this beautiful, this beautiful natural pregnancy. I was going to have this wonderful home birth if I could have it. I was going to have a water birth. And because I was in the UK, actually, there was a birthing center, a natural birthing center, where you could have the water birth and all the rest of it. I was like, so I went there to register, and they took my blood pressure, and it was really high. And I don't know, they made me sit, and they were hysterical about the blood pressure. And they said to me, look, sorry, but you are now a high-risk pregnancy. And so you cannot give birth in a natural facility. You've got to go to a hospital. They referred me to the hospital. So off I went. And so the long and the short of it is my whole pregnancy became medicalized. And I spent the whole pregnancy fighting against the medicalization. So I didn't ever get the preeclampsia. All I had was the high blood pressure. I didn't succumb to having the cortisone for the baby's lungs and having the induction. I didn't do any of that. In fact, I discharged myself from the hospital finally, and I just went home and then waited to go into labor and then went to the hospital. But when I got to the hospital, there was meconium in the waters. When the waters broke, there was meconium. This is a sign of fetal distress. And so they put the monitor and everything. And in the UK, they're very pro-natural birth, right? They put the monitor on, they examined me, and they said, listen, we've got a problem, right? This baby's heart rate's dipping. There's meconium in the waters, and you're only 1 centimeter dilated. So even if we induce you, it's going to take too long for you to go into labor. We can't risk the baby. So I ended up having a cesarean. So my whole pregnancy birth experience did not go to plan. Totally out of control. And then my mother was going to come and help me with the baby. But my mother was diagnosed with a bowel cancer just before my child was born, and she had massive surgery. In fact, she almost died. So she couldn't come. And so my husband hadn't taken any time off work. So there was me and my husband living in this little flat outside London. And I had a baby, and we had to make do. And of course I coped. But 10 months later or 8 months later, I had gallstones. So you can see anger, resentment, expectations not being met. I wanted an apology from the damn doctor. I was the helling about the medical system. They're trying to medicalize a natural process. If they just left me alone, then none of this would probably have happened. The reason why my blood pressure was so high was because the dickheads mismanaged me. That was my thinking at the time. And so, I wanted an apology, which wasn't going to happen. I wanted vengeance, which I couldn't get. I wanted things to work out a certain way. I wanted to control it, and it didn't work that way. And so I actually just didn't get anything that I wanted. And so I had all this resentment. And then I had gallstones. Okay, so the good news is that I managed to pass the gallstones. So I didn't have to have them. I didn't have to have them removed or anything like that. I didn't have to have my gallbladder removed. So I still have my gallbladder. I've never had a gallstone since. Story has a happy ending. But that's an illustration of how these things happen. So just to sum up, your liver asks you, is your life moving in the direction that your soul intends? And your gallbladder asks you, do you have enough courage to make choices that are in alignment with what your spirit or your soul would love? So, what do you do? Where do you even start? Well, you know what? The easiest place to start is with the physical. So, remember, the liver does major detoxification, right? It removes all the chemicals from your body. So, the first thing to do is to avoid chemicals as much as you can. Now, I'm not saying stop your medication, but we've got so many chemicals that we put on our bodies and in our homes. The makeup you wear, chemicals. The makeup I wear, no chemicals, mineral makeup, right? The stuff you clean your house with, chemicals. The fragrance you spray in your house, chemicals. The insecticides, the poisons, the stuff you clean your floor with, right? All of that stuff, most of it, if it's conventional stuff, it's got chemicals in it, and you are surrounding yourself with that. The lotions that you put on your body, on your skin, they get absorbed into your bloodstream. Most of them are preserved with parabens. Now, fortunately, there are loads of natural ones that will not break the bank, and you can actually get all your beauty products, all your body products, all your house cleaning products. You can get the natural version that doesn't have the chemicals in, and you don't have to go and change everything at once. As things run out, just replace them with something more natural. So that's one of the ways that you can avoid the chemicals. Obviously, eat whole foods. I mean, hello, the more processed the food, the more chemical it has in it, the more it's going to not be great for your liver and gallbladder function. So eat whole foods, try and make them as natural as possible. Yes, we can't always get organic. Yes, some of the plants are sprayed, but you know what? Plants have natural phytochemicals in them that help to combat some of those toxins. So that is better than processed. And two particular vegetable families that are very supportive for particularly detoxification pathways are cruciferous vegetables. So that's broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage and not spinach. Spinach is not cruciferous, but that the green leafy family, and the allium family, onions, chives, spring onions, garlic, right? They contain sulfuric compounds, and those help to support phase 2 detoxification. Obviously, hydrate, rest, move your body and focus on mobility and flexibility. Not all of it, but like some flexibility and mobility would be really good, because the more flexible and mobile you keep your body, the more flexible and mobile it has a ripple effect on your thoughts, your feelings, and on your liver and gallbladder function. Emotionally, start feeling your feelings. Don't suppress. Don't cover, start feeling them. We've got an episode on that. We even had an episode on the feeling meditation, which has the tool that you can use. Get honest with yourself. Stop sweeping things under the carpet. It's a very common strategy. We sweep it under the carpet, then we say, we've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. We don't want to revisit it again because we don't want to experience the negative emotion. We need to basically start becoming aware of how much we're doing that, and then making a different choice, a different strategy for moving forward with that. Mentally, keep your mind flexible, learn a new language. Duolingo is free, for example. You don't have to be able to speak it fluently. Just do something that actually activates your mind. Music, sing, play an instrument, learn an instrument if you want to, Sudokus, that kind of thing. Keep your mind flexible, all right? Learn to exercise your imagination. Your imagination is what helps you to connect to your spirit. And once you connect to your spirit, listening to your intuition helps to guide your choices. So, if you can do that, choices become much easier and much simpler. And obviously, uncover those unconscious limiting beliefs that are disappointing you, that you are constantly being triggered by every time you're disappointed, because the more aware you are of that, the more flexible you're going to become in how you manage that, the less that's going to sabotage you, and the more you're going to take clear choices for yourself and move yourself forward. And create your life consciously. Choose to become a conscious creator rather than an unconscious default creator, because we're all creating. You can choose to create your life because we all are doing that anyway. But are we doing it consciously or are we doing it unconsciously? If you're doing it consciously, then you improve your liver and gallbladder organ function energy. And this whole podcast is about how to do that. So honestly, you can go and start listening from episode 1 onwards, and everything in here is pointing in the direction of how you actually do that. So as we have seen, right, the liver and gallbladder organ function energy does a lot, right? And I want you to remember that your liver and gallbladder are not just physical organs, that they reflect how you move through your life. And that supporting this axis starts with the simple physical things that you can do. Sorry, there's a fly flying around here. Whole food, movement, rest, sleep, but it also involves doing the inner work, just as important, if not more important. And particularly if you're already doing all the right physical things, but you're still having the problems, because that was me. I was doing all the right things physically, still sitting with the issues, right? The headaches and the constipation and the PMS and those kind of things. So it needs inner work, my friends. It needs us to help to uncover. It needs us to start becoming more aware and start living more consciously, uncovering those limiting beliefs, expressing our truth, choosing alignment with ourselves, no matter what. And so this week, you can gently ask yourself, where does my energy want to go? Where does my energy want to go in my life? And if you find just an inkling of that, just ask yourself, what choices can I make today that will help that will facilitate that? What choices can I make today that's going to make me more flexible, that's going to allow my feelings to move more fully? And your choice can just be to choose to become aware. You can choose to become aware. And as soon as you make that choice, you activate your reticular activating system, which is the part of your brain that recognizes what's important to you. And then you will start noticing more things that you can become aware of. And just remember that healing doesn't begin with force. It begins with awareness. And so the awareness is key. So until next time, remember, your body carries your wisdom. Your energy carries the direction. And your healing begins when you choose to listen to yourself, when you choose to honor yourself. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your experience. You're welcome to email me. And I will see you again on the missing link in your healing podcast. Please share this with a friend directly. Send them the link if you found this valuable.